I'm always so happy on continuing conversations as the network of creatives expands and expands and expands, just like the universe. Today, we have a really good episode for people who are interested in learning more about your storytelling, even maybe how to publish your own RPG, how to network in the RPG community. But before we get started, I'm Michael Dismuke. I am a co-host here on Continuing Conversations, going into our third year of amazing podcasts. Woohoo! And I'm also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, along with being the lead writer on Captain's Log Solo RPG. And one of the main bloggers on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for everything Star Trek Adventures and Captain's Log RPG. And of course, I'm always happy on this cold autumn night to offer the warmth of my co-host, Jim Johnson.
Hey, everybody. Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, the Captain's Log Solo RPG, and project manager on the Star Trek Lower Decks Buffer Time card game, all produced by Midiphius Entertainment. Lo these many years, co-host on this here show with Michael. 3 years. Wow. And we still haven't found...
Episode 157. This actually puts us into going into year 4.
Wow, dang, that's awesome. And we still haven't found the bottom of the barrel yet. There's always something new to talk about. There's always more Star Trek to talk about.
Maybe with our guests today we have.
No, I think we'll be great. It's going to be awesome. We're looking forward to it. And so we have a very special guest on the show with us tonight. I'm going to have him introduce himself. And then, as per usual with all of our new guests on the show, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you're working on, and your favorite Star Trek series and your favorite Star Trek character. So without more ado, I want to introduce our very special guest, Ben Heisler.
The bottom of the barrel. No. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Heisler. I am the associate producer of RPGs at Renegade Game Studios. While we do not make Star Trek content, we do a lot of other licensed IP content, and I've been a lover of Star Trek and the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game for many years. But in general, I have gone from playing a lot of games and reading a lot of games to writing a lot of games to now I get paid to help other people write about games.
That's right. Drop some of the names of your IPs, guys. I know it excites me when you drop those.
All right. I'm going to try not to lose track, but we have Transformers, G.I. Joe, Power Rangers, the My Little Pony role-playing game, and
yes,
the backer kit campaign for it just closed not too long ago. Welcome to Night Vale is the new one that is coming to Essence 20 that I'm super excited. We had a very successful campaign for. And
do you promise to run me through a Brony campaign? Do you promise?
I don't know about a Brony campaign, but I will run you a Brony adventure.
One shot. I want a one-shot Brony campaign. Oh, shot, please.
On the holodeck. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, no. Next con, we got to do this now.
Please. Those are great IPs, and I interrupted you. Please tell us now your favorite Star Trek character and your favorite Star Trek series.
I appreciated the prompt. So my favorite series is just barely beating out DS9 is Lower Decks because it's a love letter to Trek in general. I have watched a whole lot of Trek and made many of the same jokes among my friends. And so it's nice to see that kind of surf back out to us. The character that I enjoy the most is probably the one who's most like me, who is Brad Boimler. I'm frequently screaming and running around and coming up with solutions.
Yes.
And yeah.
Okay, so I have one question for you. Is it Orion or Orion?
I guess it depends on which one I'm talking to. Like, I got to make sure that I'm up to date on all the protocols of what to call which Orion or Orion, depending on which one we run into in our adventures.
Good. Those are really good choices. Just so everyone knows how I know Ben is I flew out to the D8 Summit. We've had Connor Self on the show here a few times. And I went out to the D8 Summit in Dixon, Illinois, which to me was one of the most intimate and fun and warm cons I've ever been to. I ran a game there for Star Trek Adventures and was pleased to have Ben and his partner Paige sit down at the table to play Star Trek Adventures Federation Klingon War campaign, which was my first time running the game. We had a blast. Ben's character got muffed up probably about 3 times in the game with plenty of complications, and made it one of the most memorable games I've ever ran at a con. And this is when I found out that he and Paige both do work with Renegade Games, including meeting Sean Bangery. I probably mispronounced the last name. Banerjee. See, I was almost
sorry.
There.
My cat wants to be in the pictures.
They're allowed. Pets and kids are allowed on this show.
Good.
A lot.
Always allowed.
So that's when I found out about Renegade Games. Talk to us about Renegade Games. What is it that you do there again? And what, you talked about some of the IPs they have, but what does your job look like?
Sure. So first of all, I wanted to compliment you on that game. That was also a ton of fun. And now anytime we're talking about what kind of game do we want to play? I'm just like, I could run a short Klingon Federation war campaign. We could maybe make it DS9 and have it be against the Dominion instead. Someone showed me this really cool way to do it. Mm-hmm.
And you guys gave me tips on how to improve it for the board game style, which I took with me, and I did it my next time. So that was wonderful.
Ooh, good. So as I said in my intro before, sorry, I'm the associate producer of role-playing games at Renegade Game Studios. And what this means is that I come up with project outlines and ideas for source books that we want to make. I coordinate it with our IP holder, who for these games, for most of them rather, is Hasbro. And then from there, I make an outline. I hire writers. I give writers assignments and make sure that they have style guides and make sure that they have outlines and they have everything that they need to succeed. I get contracts set up with them so that they will be paid and credited for doing this work. They go off and do the work. Usually there's 1 to 2 milestones, which are basically check-ins to see how the writing's going, make sure that people are staying on track, and that it's not one of those moments that I used to have in my youth where it's just like, I can finish this the night before it's due. It'll be fine. It'll be my best work because I'm under pressure. Don't do that. That's my first tip. Don't do that.
Your job sounds strangely familiar, Jim. I don't know why.
It's pretty much the same thing, right? Just different titles.
Yeah. So then I get it from them. I do the first layer of editing, and then I coordinate with a copy editor and usually a proofreader who will review. And while all of that stuff is happening, I work with our amazing art director to get pieces created that'll hit the high notes or be good illustrations of characters. Get all the text files together, then very, very talented layout people put it together and make it look really pretty because they wouldn't want to buy my text files. And then from there, we do a couple additional rounds of editing, make sure that it's reviewed by the IP holder. And then from there, we go to print and make sure that the book looks good and that everything's as it should be before it's shipped over. And we start selling the PDFs.
Wow. You and Jim could play a pair of binars in Star Trek.
I mean, we probably could. I was actually laughing about this as I was putting together my notes a little while ago. I'm like, why didn't I just have Al Spader on to do this? He did the same thing I did, basically. As far as starting out working, it's working on adventures and eventually working into doing full games and stuff like that.
Yeah, what I like about this, and Jim, this is where I actually I'm going to end up interviewing both Jim and Ben about this because your scopes are so large of the projects that you're managing. People have the question. A lot of people we meet at cons. I had the pleasure at Big Bad Con in Burlingame, California, where Ben was at too a couple weeks ago, to run a story writing class about RPGs. How to write RPGs, not how to write novels, because that's different, but how to write RPGs. And there's a lot of people who listen to this show or people who are wondering, hey, how do I get started writing RPG modules. And so who better to ask than both of you, Jim and Ben, as to really how do you get started? We all have our stories, but maybe Jim, will bounce it to you first. Like, what are you looking for in deciding and selecting someone to write an RPG module? And then throw that question over to Ben.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think about how I got started 20 odd years ago, just writing stuff for a game that I loved and just putting up online for free. I mean, not even thinking about selling it, but just like being involved in the community of the fans that were playing the game that I was playing and being really passionate about it. I mean, I got started with the Decipher Lord of the Rings RPG. I just love that RPG, even though, 20 years later, it has a lot of flaws. But in the moment when it came out, everybody was super hype on Lord of the Rings. It was like, this was a really cool game. It had a lot of great concepts in it. And so I knew the IP really well. So I would just start churning out content just out of passion as a fan and putting stuff on, sharing with the community, and caught the eye of the line developer at the time. And I said, well, here's this, do you have any opportunities for like a little writing work, or even proofreading? Because I was, I got my degree in English nonfiction writing and editing, so I thought I had some skills that maybe I could contribute just to support the game, right? And that led to a couple of writing assignments, and then it just went on from there, right? And I think if I hadn't done this stuff out of the love and just shared it with the community, I don't think I would have been able to get it moving, because I think that was really a calling card to say, hey, I can write. I know the IP. And not only do I know the IP, but because this is specifically writing for a game system, I know your game system, right? I think that's really important. I think I've seen a lot of freelancers over the years come and go who will write for literally anything. And, in confidence, they read the core book, and 10 minutes later, they're drafting up an adventure or something that's clearly not really a good fit. Or they'll take an adventure that they've had on their shelf, and they'll file off, one set of game mechanics and slap on another game mechanics, and it doesn't really feel right, because it's just kind of bolted on, right? So I think, my advice is, if you're a writer and you're passionate about a particular game line, write cool fan content for that. Find a place to post it. I mean, Star Trek Adventures is a great example. Continuing Mission is an amazing fan site. I'm sure other game lines have websites similar to that. So take advantage of it. Get yourself plugged into the community, and you'll never know what connections you'll make. Ben, what's your thoughts?
I mean, much the same, though my starting advice goes a little bit further back, which is to read and play a whole bunch of different games. While knowing one IP and creating that fan content is great. Like, don't get me wrong, that's the perfect way to get noticed, especially if you're posting things where that the line, where either authors or people like me are. I frequently do outreach on Discord, usually twice a week, to get in touch with our communities, and also to find out what people are making and stuff like that. But what I always tell people to start to do, even before they're starting to make that fan-created content, is to play and write a lot of different games and systems. So if you're the type of person that's like, Star Trek Adventures is my bread and butter, that's the only system I know, go play something else. Go play 5 other something else's and see how they make systems, how they design challenges, and it'll teach you, how to write. Like, hey, I had fun with this story. This is a good story. What can I learn from this? You do the same thing with good game mechanics that you learn by playing other games, and you can learn a lot by game mechanics that you experience in other games that you don't like. I'm thinking about, why was this here, and what was it trying to accomplish, and is there a better way, or what would I do differently? And as you collect those ideas, start writing them down, and then either go into fan created content, or there's so many places now where you can just publish directly. Ideally, you're having someone else look at your work, and we'll go step by step down this. But there are places where you can release your work now instead of just for free, but on either cite your own or let people pay what they want.
Yeah. Do you think the landscape for getting into the industry changed because of the pandemic? I have to ask that because when I had never gone to a gaming con. I'd been to like Comic-Con, yeah, and there's a lot of gaming going on at Comic-Cons, but I had never been to a strictly gaming con until after the pandemic, and I was like, whoa, these people all know each other, and that was like really interesting to me. So do you think the pandemic changed the opportunity cycle to get into writing, meeting people, networking? Do you think it's opened up a new avenue?
Do you want to go first, Jim, or would you like?
No, go ahead. You're the guest. You go ahead and go first. I'll pick up after you.
Okay, sounds good. I think it's definitely changed it. When I was coming up, it was a lot of travel, a lot of going to conventions to meet people, and often that would be so. I'm going to wind back the clock a little bit and point out that I started playing like at the tail end just of like Living Greyhawk, and then played a wide variety of living systems, but most of which was Living Forgotten Realms, which is the 4th edition version. All of these things required you to go places, and thankfully now that's not as beholden, because that was really gatekeepery in a lot of ways, as far as like you need to be in person to meet these people to move forward with getting your foot in the door with meeting them and showing that you know what's going on. And now you can do that online a lot easier. My experience comes from the event space, from doing a bunch of traveling and going places and meeting other organizers and meeting other writers, and then of course meeting players and DMs.
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems like what I noticed a difference in, and Jim, actually, I want to you add on before I comment my observations.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with Ben. I think, up to a certain point, you had to go to conventions to network effectively, and going to conventions isn't cheap, right? You're either flying or driving, and that takes time. You got to go to the convention, you got to pay for a hotel, assuming you're not invited as a guest, which vast majority of us are not right, invited as guests, so we're paying our own way. And to get into some of the certain parties or certain little groups, it is kind of gatekeepery, kind of coffee clatchy, and if you're not in the in crowd, then you're on the periphery, and it's hard to make connections sometimes. I think the pandemic helped in that a lot of creators and designers and managers like myself and Ben are online frequently, if not daily. I mean, I'm on daily, but I know, Ben, you said you're on a couple of days a week on Discord.
I mean, I'm on there like outward facing, talking to people a couple of times a week. I am always online. I'm not gonna say I'm always scrolling, like doom scrolling, but like there's a good chance multiple times for the day I'm looking through, and of course I'm in all those communities to see what's going on, in addition to keeping up with the rest of my online life.
Yeah, absolutely. So that just makes it easier for fans and prospective freelancers to connect with the people that are involved in the games that they're interested in, right? Or even just to talk shop, right? There are certain online forums and places that you can go to talk shop without a whole bunch of noise in the background. There are certainly some noisy places, but you find the little pockets of sanity, so to speak. They're out there, and then you can get some useful conversations out there. But so, Michael, yeah, in long-winded answer to your question, I think the pandemic did help, because I think it drove more people to the online environments, which in a lot of ways I think has broken down some barriers and made it a little bit more accessible. Yeah, you don't have to spend a lot of money to fly to the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I might give you even a little credit and get your observations on not only the pandemic, but at the same time, there was the social movement happening, 2018 going forward too, where the idea of opening doors and inclusion came into like, hey, how diverse are we? I'm not a player of Dungeons and Dragons or Lord of the Rings. I've never played them, but I heard that there had to be a shift in the language used in the text and stuff like that to include more people in the game. I'm thoroughly impressed, I'll say, with this new genre of job that I see in the RPG arena of people who are doing the term, is it diversity reading or diversity editing?
Sensitivity reading.
Yeah, sensitivity reading and cultural consulting.
Yes. Yeah. So is that also an infusion of opportunity for people into the industry? I'm curious to see what your takes on that are.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I think the internet, making it easier for people to connect, especially the huge diversity of everything out there that makes it easier for people to connect. I think especially the younger generations are much more aware of things that we were just figuring out as Gen Xers, right? We didn't have the vocabulary that we have now, and I think that combined with the explosion of independent publishing, like with Itch.io and just being able to publish your own stuff, all of a sudden, the big companies that are out there aren't the only games in town anymore, right? You got some of the big stalwart companies that have been around forever, but then you got thousands and thousands of indie publishers and small presses and everything else making stuff. And if you're not speaking the language of the current generation of gamers, then you're being left behind, and you need to have that diversity of thought and diversity of look and feel and everything else to be active, I think.
Yeah. Ben, how are you seeing that affect the gaming industry from your vantage point?
I think it was both the pandemic, but I also think that it was the rise of actual plays that helped a lot, with the visibility of more people playing RPGs and more people, questioning why it isn't better. Because when I was growing up, for the most part, other than a few talented POCs that made it through, like I think Cyberpunk, and some other really relatively few games and projects, it was mostly all done by white dudes. It was a white dude's hobby. And more people seeing it, more people going, oh my God, it's not summoning demons, it's just math and improv.
Exactly.
I'm making a bunch of hand motions. I won't recall if this is video. I'm subscribed on Spotify.
The Spotify people will really enjoy that.
Yes. The Spotify people. There we go.
There you go.
And I think that a few big missteps, especially by Wizards of the Coast, have made us realize, and this was a tumultuous thing, and it's still ongoing, that there's no reason to be gatekeepers. We should be welcoming people to the hobby, and we should, very much like Jim said, we need to update our language. We need to learn to do better. And a lot of groups have, and a lot of groups still strive forward to that. And there's still a lot of trolls that we're still trying to kick out of the community, or send off on their way to where they are, not being bigots and monsters to the people who also deserve to play this game, which is everyone.
Yeah, I've seen such a nice. I guess I came in at the good time of Gen Cons and D8 summits and big bad cons and stuff like that, where I'm impressed by the diversity. When I walk in there, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like walking, I love at Gen Con and even at Big Bad Con, walking room by room and seeing these different groups of people playing, and just, they're letting me watch them for a little bit and being like, wow, what a different look to what I thought of gaming when I grew up in the 80s in my little, middle class white town in Pacifica, California, where I was the POC. I didn't feel like it. I lived a very blessed life with really good people, but I understand people have not all had that experience. But now, like walking into these cons and be like, oh man, you have a group for everyone who wants to play, and that includes meaning people wanting people who look like them writing for them also. So what's your advice? Again, going back to the premise of this show, what's your advice? We talked about networking. We talked about going to cons, being present. Let's talk about how to present yourself as a professional writer, because I think that's kind of important too. I mentor people, in my work as an organizational developer. I'm happy to now start mentoring people who want to become writers also in the RPG arena. And I think it's really important to talk about presentation. So let's go easy for people who are listening. What's your turnoffs? Like what's an instant, like, I don't want to hear from you. I don't need you to submit anything to me. What are some missteps that people should really avoid doing if they're interested in getting in the industry? Because it is a small world. You ruin your reputation, it can spread. So let's talk about missteps that people should avoid.
Sure. I mean, so the first one that I will say is don't come to someone that's in the industry, such as myself, without having a portfolio together or anything written yet. That's a big that's like my big faux pas. I meet a fair number of people who do actual plays, who do other stuff like that, who would like to get more into game design, but haven't actually done it yet. And this
let's qualify written yet. Are you saying they have been published and paid for publishing, or what are you talking about? Let's be specific.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not talking about that you're published and that you have received a check for something that is printed in a book. I'm saying that you've written something and you have put it out there on your blog, on, as we talked about earlier, about various self-publishing opportunities, like Continuing Mission, Drive-Thru RPG, itch.io, all of that type of stuff. Like, the job as a writer is to write, and and show me that you can write. Not only that you can write, but that you can write the thing that you're passionate about. So it kind of goes back to Jim's earlier bit about like doing fan work. That's certainly a way to do it, or just writing things that you put off as small publications on any of those sites, or even, like I said, your blog or your website, and have it be available there for people to see.
That's right. I was blogging for 3 years before Jim reached out to me. All of a sudden, I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't expecting it because I was doing it out of passion, and I was pleasantly surprised. And he knows he's the man who launched my career with an established IP. I'll always have him to thank for that. Jim, again, missteps. What do you not want to see?
The two that spring immediately to mind. Number one, if you are a prospective freelancer, whether it's art, writing, proofreading, editing, like whatever your thing is, if you don't have an easy way for me to contact you, then what are you doing, right? Like if you are seriously out there saying, I want to work in the industry, I want to work for X company, Y company, I want to do this stuff. If your Twitter account is locked down so that nobody can DM you, you don't have an email address, you don't have an art station, you don't have an online portfolio, you don't have any way for me to contact who you are, other than through a layer of screen names or something. Like I mean, I get that, internet safety is important and privacy is important, but at the same time, if you're putting yourself out there, make it easy for me as someone who wants to hire you, make it easy for me to get in touch with you. Because I don't just take cold calls coming my way. I reach out to people too. I'll say, hey, Michael, I liked your stuff on Continuing Mission. I want you to do some work for me. Or I'll do that with other places. But if I can't find a way to contact you, then I'm going to move on to the next person who I can contact. Right. So don't shoot yourself in the foot.
Do you think people should have their own website?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so easy now to put a website up, even just a link tree or something, right? I mean, it takes so little effort to put something up on there.
Ben was holding his thumbs up for everybody on the podcast. When I said website, he held 2 thumbs up, just so he supported Jim's statement.
Well, I don't want to talk over Jim, but I want to let my support be known. I don't know how this works yet. We're hanging out for the first time in this thing, man.
We're at a coffee shop. We're conversing. Old men are walking by screaming at us. Women are tripping over. Yeah, it's a coffee shop.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's my first pet peeve. The second pet peeve is everybody is entitled to their opinion, and I totally respect that. At the same time, though, if you are a prospective writer and you want to write an adventure for a game line, or you want to write content for a game line, and you're writing reviews of other products in that game line, and you're slagging those products and saying how much better you could do, like, that doesn't feel to me like someone I really want to work with, right? If you're slagging on the products that you want to be working on, or you're talking bad about the IP. I mean, ideally, I would like my writers and editors and artists to be appreciative of and supportive of the IP, like be a good brand ambassador, even if all you're doing is writing a little 3,000 word chunk of content for it. Hopefully you're passionate about the property and can show that professionally.
I gotta support this. I gotta really support this, because I know I came in at the advent of Discovery, and we know that was a controversial show, and I defy anybody out there who's a hater on Discovery that if Paramount said, you know what, maybe you have some valid ideas, would you like to work for us? That they wouldn't go, yes, I'll write for Discovery, right? And so as a writer, you have to be open and flexible that maybe it's not your favorite. Well, you know what your job is as a writer? Is to make it a favorite. Like, if you're so good, stop slagging it and be positive. So I really enjoyed, Jim, early on. You had set that as a standard for anybody working with the Star Trek Adventures line on that. Ben, do you have anything to add on that? Because you, again, deal with a lot of popular and controversial IPs.
I'm going to double down on what Jim said about having your own website. It's super easy to do now. It's a great place to have somebody be able to contact you and to show your work. And it's, you may need to work with some people, but it needs to be visually presentable and easy to read, is my add-on there. Which means that I have totally forgotten what it is that you asked me about a moment ago.
No problem. It was about slagging. No, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So
I know, to support you on that too. The minute I found out that michaeldismuke.com was available out there, I paid the money and I got it, because I'm like, I may not have it, needs it now, but later on, sure enough, 2 years later, I had 20 publications to put up there. I was so glad I had locked that down. So yes, to that point. Now talk about slogging IPs.
Yeah. So I'm very, I'm blessed when it comes to IPs and opinions that I generally like. I know that all of the IPs that I work on are problematic in one way, shape, or form. Like, trust me, I'm aware. But you do not need to bring that up every time you're talking about the property. Like, you need to look on the positive sides of it, and you need to look at ways that you can embrace that community and either overcome or just work around its flaws. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work to create. It takes a lot of work, a lot of love, and a lot of time. It doesn't take that to say something should. That's right. I don't want somebody that's not going to put in the effort, that's only going to complain, to be working for me on anything. Now, admittedly, we also work on World of Darkness. There's a long-standing set of issues there. So I'm used to hearing about complaints from fans. Admittedly, I don't work on as much of that side of the house, but there's a lot of things you can do, and a lot of that starts very much to how Jim said about being positive in the community. And while not necessarily being a brand ambassador, like, you don't have to armor up in white knight for the property.
Right.
You just have to understand that there are some things it does great and some things it does poorly, and cherish it.
Yeah. And I want to differentiate. I'm not talking about fans here. This show is about people who aspire to be writers, which means, AKA, you aspire to be a professional working with professionals, which is different. If you're a fan and you want to just go out there and slag, and okay, rip away, that's fine. Don't worry about working in the industry. But if you want to be a professional, that's Agreed. A whole nother story, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so I think that presentation starts very early on. And I just say that because, I'm not big on social media. I'm only on social media for work, whether it's my day job or whether it's Star Trek. And I see how some people make their first introductions to the community. And then later on, they talk about wanting to write. Take it, Jim.
Well, I don't know.
Does someone I know do this? Like, are you outing yourself there, Michael? I hope not.
No, I've always been polite on. I hold back sarcasm a lot because I'm a sarcastic individual. So believe me, I am very restrained on. And when I'm not, Jim will be like, "Hey, you may want to think about how that sounds." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right." But Jim, take it about how we present ourselves on social media if we think we want to be professional writers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tricky because you don't want people to not be themselves online, but like, the internet is forever, right? Twitter posts, Facebook posts, they're going to be out there somewhere. Even if you think it's private and locked down, nothing is really private on the internet. Somehow this stuff comes out, right? And if you're, a certain personality and you're just, mean-spirited and negative and talking rough about everything, I do my research, right? Like, if someone reaches out to me on email and says, "Hey, I'd be interested in working for you," I'll go see if they have a Twitter. I'll go see if they have Facebook. I'll look at some of their post history just to try to get a feel for them beyond the email that they sent. And if it's, super political in one direction or another, or if they're just having like a really lot of negative comments about a lot of things, I have to look at that and go, is this somebody I want to work with for 6 months or a year? is this indicative of who they are? And, probably. I think I always believe in the adage that if someone shows you who they are, believe them, right? Believe them. And so how you present yourself online, in all the various ways that you do, is a reflection on who you are, and that will, whether you like it or not, will have an impact on my perception of you. And so that's a piece of it. I think I've noticed, plenty of writers maybe don't do a full diligent effort to proofread their emails, right? So they want to write for me, but their emails are chock full of errors and stuff. And it's like, this is your calling card. This is your first opportunity to reach out to me, and this is not, I mean, it might be English, but it might be pretty rough English. And I like to give people the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. But if you're tossing off a 30-second email just to look for work, like, are you really looking for work? Or are you just, playing the, just making a half-hearted effort at it? I don't know. I'll pause there, Ben. What do you want to add or could just change over?
I was merely like going to agree with you somewhat, but also make the joke that, like, yes, I used to like triple check my emails before I send them, and now I'm just like, are there any red lines? Does this look okay? Yeah, sure. But like, I think as far as your online presence, I'll agree. You do want to make sure that your website or your socials, like your bio, for instance, and other places where like it's clear that you're presenting rather than like forming ideas and sharing them with the internet, because everybody makes typos when you're putting up a Twitter thread. But take the time, take a look at them, use some tools. There's a lot of great free tools out there, such as my brain just blanked, but Hemingway app is one that I use frequently. And there's of course just spell check and to write things out and read them before you put them somewhere that it's going to be representing you. And such as like the simple editing tricks of like, hey, read it backwards and make sure it still reads sense, and that it's not awkward when you're, going line by line as far as your sentences and stuff like that. Right. Draft it, put it away for a day, take a look at it with fresh eyes, catch things that you wouldn't have seen before, and then think about sending it or posting it and things like that. So
have I don't do anything. I don't do any writing without a partner. That's for sure. So I have people who
I don't either.
I don't trust myself. At work, I have a team of 2 in communications with me, and we all, I don't care if it's a simple email about a holiday announcement that we have a day off, someone else looks at it, even if it's 3 lines. Tone, going back to what we were talking before, I just don't want to overemphasize the tone and the social media, because, and this isn't even talking about just writing. I work at a company of hundreds of people. I hire and have managed hundreds of people in my lifetime. I can't tell you how much I saw a great resume, and then I went and looked on their social media, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever may have happened. And I was like, whoa, that's the real person. And the tone and the respect they give to other people told me exactly what I can expect if they're on my team. So, and I'm a sarcastic person, believe me. I get reeled in a lot just because I'm a naturally awkward. I love cynicism and stuff like that, but you will not see that conveyed as my personality online. That is in my home with my friends, but online it's a professional thing. So I just want people I really want to, if you want to be a writer, have whatever quirks you want, but it's just like getting a job at any other company. People are going to look into you, look at how you represent your tone online, because that's what we have to work with. And no, even though people want to say it, anything does not go in the world. It does not go in the world of professionalism. Anything. Sorry, nice that your parents gave you gold stars growing up and you could do no wrong. It's not reality. You got to find the professional environment you're working in. And I mentor people on this all the time, and understand that we do all have kinds of code switching or masks you wear in different professional environments. And you have to learn that. And if you don't like it, stay working where you're working, or whoever gave you a job, because it's just not reality as you diversify the people you work with. That's my little soapbox. I'm getting off now.
That's fine, Michael. Yeah, that's all good. I think I agree with you. I think especially because so much of RPGs, I mean, we're talking writing and editing and mostly here stuff, right? I mean, art is a whole different thing, but we're talking about writing, right? There's nuances in writing. Right? You can be confident and not be arrogant, and you can be confident and a little bit arrogant, but not be belligerent, right? There are nuances to all of that, and if you aren't a strong enough writer to be able to differentiate those, you might be delivering the wrong message to the people that you're reaching out to. You might be coming off as like super full of yourself and super arrogant, and you may not be intending it. But if that's our first impression of you, that might be a red flag, and you may not have intended that. And we certainly want to give you the benefit of the doubt. But just think, yeah, you certainly have somebody else read your stuff just before you send it, just to get that extra sanity check on it before you potentially make a mistake, because you've only got one chance to make a first impression. And, like Ben said, this is a small industry, and not that we always talk shop to each other, but, word gets around. And when you're looking for reliable people to work on, the people that have been difficult to work with or come across with a really abrasive tone are less likely to get work.
Ben's nodding in agreement, everyone, just so you know.
I am nodding in agreement. I agree with all of these things. I'll say the thing that it's interesting, because these are all things that I consider, but I don't, like, to me, when I'm looking to hire people, almost like so much of the time it's just freelance work, which is great work. It's how I got a job here. By doing freelance stuff. But generally, I want to look at their portfolio, hear what they're interested in, and then I'll check them out, but not to as deep of a layer as Jim will. But all of these things are true about your online presence, and making sure that you are someone people want to hire, rather than someone. It goes back to what we were saying. Like, you can be the best at something, but if you're a jerk, nobody's going to want to pay you money for it, unless, Yeah. Like, I was going to say, like, unless you're like a lawyer or something, because it seems to be a trait that happens to all TV lawyers. But still, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to talk about that too, and just humility. I think one of the things I've learned writing is everyone has good ideas. I really do believe that. I really do believe everyone has great ideas. Now, who has the power to execute them onto paper is an entirely different skill set. So that's the humility factor, because there's times where I've thrown an idea, for instance, to Jim. He's like, I've heard this idea 100 times. Oh, okay. So 100 other people. So I have to be humble and really go back to work and say, okay, what is innovative and what is new? So let's talk about that humility factor as a quotient, Ben.
But of those 100 ideas, how many people have actually done the work, Jim? Like, that's the real question. Like, that was one of my early points I had written down about my notes, was like, you can have a bajillion great ideas, but if you don't write them down, it doesn't do you anything in the world of writing, because what's written is what's real. You were talking about
I'm going to give a cheat on that too. I'm going to give some people a technological cheat. Nowadays, if you're really good at talking your ideas out, record them. There's free transcription software. So now all you have to do is transcribe it and then now put it into writing form. So I have people who can talk 4 hours about the best plot they could ever think of for TNG. Well, you should have just been an hour writing it down, because now you could actually pitched it, And so that, to your point, Ben, is discipline, write it down. That's sometimes, I think, 50% of the work, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think for like you, Michael, all those 100 writers who gave me the same idea, I try really hard to tell them, not only did 100 people give me this idea already, but do something with it. Keep at it. Keep writing. Get out of the way of the low hanging fruit and the obvious ideas that come to mind, and dig deeper. Combine it with something else. Like, come back to me, because like I always try to invite people to come back with more pitches or more ideas or some refinements, or maybe I'll give them a couple of sentences and say, I've seen this idea before, but what if you thought of this, or what if you thought of that? And then I'd say probably 8 times out of 10 I never hear from them again, which is okay, fine. I'm in editor giving you some direct ideas and advice, and I'm giving you a direct invitation to come back and pitch to me. If you don't take advantage of that, that's okay. That's up to you. I've offered the invitation. That's my job. And then you come back or you don't. But the two writers who do take those ideas to heart and spin it off and come up with a totally fresh spin on that idea that 100 other people did, I think more often than not, I usually end up going, yep, I want you to do that. And then I'll commission the work and move on. But because that shows me that they're willing to take feedback, and they're willing to take that feedback to the next level, and they'll do something different with it. And I get really excited about that, to see them breaking out of their own head, right, and getting away from the low hanging fruit and doing something different with it. I don't know if you've had the similar experiences or not, Ben.
I've had some. There's a lot of the flip side of that to a degree is also like there's only 21 stories out there, so anything that comes to mind that you can make work, use it. You're going to be super worried that like, oh, they're going to realize that I'm taking this thing from this thing I like and adding this other thing and blah blah blah. It's like that's how stories work. We've all been telling these same 21 stories or whatever. We're just adding different twists on them to make them different. Like don't worry about it. Create. By creating, you will make it yours.
Right. That goes back to the humility, right? Like I can point to my shelf and say, William Shakespeare back in the day, he's done every story imaginable. So don't worry about it.
Yeah,
make it your own.
Exactly. Yeah. It's also like one of the things that I have in my notes that I'm not sure if we'll get to, but as far as reaching for that next idea, one of the things and talking to other people, one of the things that I found super helpful as I was coming up and even today is to again find those people in those communities that you appreciate. So if you read a good adventure or read a good book and follow that author and then tell them that they like their stuff and pay attention to it and make notes about what you like and what you don't like, by reading these things, it kind of helps unlock your idea of what can be in a lot of ways, and how you can take a story and make it your own as you develop your voice for both as a storyteller and as a designer as to what's important to you in an adventure and what things inspire you and how can you make it fun and appeal to different types of players.
I can't emphasize that enough. Learning the construct of how stories work, so that when you are watching TV or reading a book or a comic book, you actually can deconstruct and say, oh, I see them using these tropes, these common storytelling techniques. I don't know if I ever told you this, Jim. I know I told it in a workshop class I taught, but one of the first mission brief packs I had sent to you, I think it was the Trade Ledgers pack, or Growing Pains. I had actually scoured a bunch of A-Team episodes and old Mission Impossible episodes to look for the plot run through lines, and I readapted those into the Star Trek. I don't remember if I told you that or not. Did I? I didn't. So I was like, I need to get 10 stories. Let me look at all these stories. Oh, and in fact, one of them was also the Love Boat. That's where the SS Tranquil story came from. So I literally went on Wikipedia and looked at all those little plot boxes and selected the ones that were cool. And I said, okay, now let me swap it out and mix it up a little bit. And that's where, because I had to write fast and I needed some solid plot ideas, those TV shows in the 80s were solid for that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, like Ben said, there's only 20 some stories out there. So take those core tropes. I mean, that's why they're tropes, right? Take those tropes and put a fresh spin on them. Add in the Star Trek isms or whatever IP you're working on, and then you're off and running with a fresh story.
Yep. I mean, just take a look at Star Trek TNG Season 8. That's a great example of when Mike McCann was taking those ideas and remixing them, and eventually that turned into Lower Decks.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool. What else, Ben, did you have? What other, again, advice on writing RPGs? Did you have anything else in your notes that you wanted to give us before we have a send-off?
Yeah. So one of the things to add off of what I last talked about with finding writers, being on the internet now has made this a lot easier to find and connect with people whose work that you enjoy. And to continue to network and cultivate those relationships. If they happen at a con in person, that's great. If they happen through continued comments on Discord or Twitter or wherever else, that's great too. There's a lot of various collaborations that come up in RPGs, and I know a fair number of people that have come to me and are like, oh yeah, I was on this collaboration and it was cool, and then I worked on this thing by myself and this thing by myself, and I like to find other people to work with. What happened to all the people you collaborated with on your collaboration? Work on those relationships, read their stuff and get feedback. Have them read your stuff and get feedback, and continue working with these people and making more connections and being involved in more collaborations. I'm not saying stop your own stuff to work on collaborations, but know that especially in this world, getting back to it being a small world, that every time that you can collaborate or network together with someone, find out what you can learn and how you can continue that relationship.
Love that.
Because you'll both benefit from it.
Yeah, it is. We're not, no one is a great writer without any, but if you look at all the great writers, they have great support systems, great agents, great editors, great, they attend parties and do the book signings. They do the work. They really do the work in a disciplined style.
Yeah. But not only do they have agents and editors and professional, they also have peers and colleagues, right? That they connect with and interact with and socialize with and work with and collaborate with. I think, if you're getting into the industry or just writing or whatever in general, really be thoughtful about how you want to pursue the work, right? Do you want it to be transactional, where you're just getting assignments from one place or another place and you're just doing the work? Or are you trying to build a good community and you're trying to build relationships and you're trying to build connections, right? Like I've been really fortunate to build a lot of connections with the Star Trek Adventures with Michael and Alex Spader and so many other folks. And they've become friends and they become collaborators on stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with Modiphius or nothing to do with Star Trek. And I'm grateful for that, because they're learning from me, but I'm learning from them. And we're getting stronger as a result of that. And we're building this little community and it's really cool. And we're seeing more people come and go and whatnot. And that's really great, because that's what I wanted. I didn't want it to just be, oh, I'm going to give you this piece of work and now you're done. And I'm going to give you this piece of work and now you're done. So certainly some folks have done that and have come and gone, and that's fine. I think you just, as a freelancer, you need to decide what you want out of the deal, right? Do you want it to just be transactional? And then you play it out that way, and we can sense it, right? Like I think we're all smart enough to know, okay, this person's just in it for a quick assignment, and they don't have a passion for it, or they don't want to get into the community. But then the ones that are like really excited about the community and want to be part of it, then they'll stick around, and you start building relationships and connections, and you start thinking about what happens, especially with licensed IPs, right? They come and go after a certain time frame. You start thinking about, what do I do in X number of years when this is no longer a thing? Will I still have these connections? Will I still have these relationships? Is this person, using me because I'm working on Star Trek and I can give them opportunities on Star Trek? If that goes away, do they go away? Or have we built something here that is going to last to the next project? Because like Ben said, this is a very small industry. People work with each other all the time, and you never know who's going to be your next boss, or your next acquisitions editor, or your next freelancer, right?
Yeah.
If Star Trek goes away someday, Michael, I might be working for you. I might be coming to you to say, hey, you're working on this cool thing. Do you have any opportunities for me? Right? You never know, because things happen so fast, and companies come and companies go, and IPs change hands all the time. It's just crazy how much change there is in the industry.
Yep, and IPs and licensing deals, they do come and they do go, and sometimes they get multiple editions, and sometimes they don't. Yeah. And while it's great to have those people that are passionate about the community, it is also good to know people that are hired guns that will do a certain word count on a topic well, and it's just transactional. Like, that is an okay way to live. You don't have to. You don't have to avoid that lifestyle. But on the other hand,
encouragement. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but like on the other hand, it's very much like Jim said. I got a lot of my early work through the Adventures League, D&D Adventures League, which is 5th edition's marketing, organized play efforts. And one of the leaders over there was named Travis Woodall, and I did a bunch of work through Travis. And I just hired Travis last year to work on something for me. It was really weird to me,
Cool.
but it was really rewarding.
But it's true. I mean, I just, my own personal thing is Jim pushed me out of the nest. He's like, you can't just do what he's saying about starting. He's like, expand. And him and Derek Tyler Attico, Dayton Ward, they kind of said, you got to just, Dayton Ward's advice was take everything that comes to you. You know, of course, he says you don't have to take it if you don't like it, but he says, write everything that comes to you. Just say yes, you know, as much as you can. Derek Tyler Attico pushed me, and he got me to do my own novel. I don't care if it sells or not. I just had to do the exercise. That you got to do the exercise to prove that you can write it. And then meeting Jim, I met Al and Troy Mepians, who both have projects who I've been able to contribute to. And I'm just doing it to get a body of work to show I can meet those deadlines. And people have to be willing to do that. You can't always write what you like, even though I do like everything I write, but it's not necessarily something you're passionate about. You have to prove that you can be a professional. To your point, Ben, is you sometimes have to have those transactions, right?
And huge part of the work, by the way, that we didn't talk about. We talked about knowing people and being your presence known and all that stuff. Do stuff to the word count and turn it in on time. That's how you get more words. That's how people will hire you for more words. It doesn't have to be great. It has to be good, but it has to be turned in on time near the word count. Please, if you take nothing else from this.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ben. In fact, you had mentioned it briefly just a few minutes ago. I was going to emphasize that as a freelancer coming into the industry, whether you're doing fiction writing or RPG writing or whatever, a really useful skill is to be self-reflective or whatever, and really figure out what kind of word counts can you hit on a given time frame, right? Are you the type of writer who can reliably write 10,000 words a week, 20,000 words a month, whatever your sweet spot is, whatever works for you, whether it's coming into a completely new IP that you know nothing about, how much can you reliably write, or if it's an IP you know really well, what can you do? How long does it take you to write clean, professional copy on a word count on deadline? And because that piece of information is critical for your editors and your project managers and your producers, because we have deadlines, we have budgets, we have all kinds of things that we need to line up. And if I say, hey, Michael, I've got a 20,000 word assignment and I need it by the end of November, can you hit it? Now, if I know the person, I probably already know the answer because they've proven it time and time again. But if you're somebody new, I'm still going to give you a chance. But you have that information that I don't have. And if you say, oh, I don't know, sure, and then you prove that you can't, then I'm not going to be able to work with you again because you don't know your craft, right? Enough to even reliably tell me. Now, of course, crises come up, acts of God come up, health issues come up, life comes up. Sure, I get it. We've all heard the same excuses because we make up a lot of the same excuses for the work that we've done in the past, right? It's the reality.
What do you mean?
But
my third grandma did die.
I'm keeping track, Michael. Anyway, so as a freelancer, you should really know reliably what you are capable of taking on, so that when someone does offer you an assignment, you can with some confidence say, yes, I can do that, or no, I can't do that. And that's okay to say no, because there might be another opportunity coming along. I would much rather a freelancer say, no, I can't do this, than to say, yes, I can do this, and then I don't hear from them until the day of the deadline, and they're like, oh, I need a 2-week extension because of whatever reason. It's like,
Though I've got some good jobs from Jim because of them.
Then, yeah, I mean, and that's the reality, right?
This is where that mercenary thing comes in hand.
Yeah, totally. If you're reliable and someone else drops the ball, I'm going to the person who's reliable and saying, okay, this person dropped the ball, you're off and running. And they off and running. I've had it happen plenty of times. I don't love it, but that's just the reality. Is our production schedules do not wait, right? And they got to get done. So I think that ties into the humility probably too. As a prospective writer, understand that initially your first contact is probably going to be kind of transactional, because you need to prove that you can deliver. And if you can't deliver, okay, then we'll move on. But you got to at least show that you're professional enough to hit a deadline and hit your word counts. Don't go way over, but also don't go way short.
Yeah. In a future episode, we are going to actually, I do want to talk about outlining and time management for for any kind of writing project, which we'll go into later. But this has been a wealth of information. Again, let's do one line of advice if you're going to, as we go out, and then we'll get to our gratitude. I'll start it, then we'll go Jim, and then Ben. My line of advice is discipline and humility. You gotta get a regimen, just like, you work out to hit your goals, you have mental health regiments to, stay happy. As a writer, be a professional. Discipline and humility, prove that you can pump it out. Jim?
My one piece of advice beyond everything else we talked about tonight is don't do my job for me. Don't self-reject. If you want to work with me, or you want to be involved, don't just think, oh, he's going to reject this, he's going to hate this, I'm not even going to try. Like, take the shot, right? Take the shot. Let me do my job, because it might lead to other opportunities, right? It might not be what I need right now, but it might be something I need in 6 months. So shoot your shot.
Love that. Oh, that's tough. I love that.
I also love that. The number of people who I mentor that are like, I did this thing, but nobody's going to love it. And I'm like, this is a great idea. Why are you not, like, you should love this? And that's the only way the people are going to, and they're blown away every time. Is it okay? Do I need to have a new one, or do I need to, like, all right, cool. I'm not going to have a new one then. I'm going to go back to my original point. Play more, read more, do it. It'll make you better. It'll make you have more fun.
Love that.
You'll write more things that are good.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, to that point, again, I now jump into other game systems just to see the mechanics, to get new ideas. So I love that that's your piece going out. All right, so let's do some gratitude. I'm actually going to do a shout out to the promoters and the people who put together Big Bad Con. That was so much fun. This is the first show we're shooting since we were there, me and Ben. And what was different about Big Bad Con, it's the first one I've been to where it was basically a big networking event and people showing off their games. It wasn't just fan service. There were definitely fans there, but I was super impressed that every table seemed to be talking about what's going on and what are you working on, and that was one of the biggest questions I heard the entire time is, what project are you working on? And so I just started imitating the question. I kept, I don't know who this person is. Oh, so what are you working on? And I was just flabbergasted with how many projects are going on out there and how many contacts and emails I've already exchanged. Just asking people, hey, keep me up with what you're doing, or hey, they're reaching out to me, hey, anything you know, let me know. So to me, that's that networking. So Big Bad Con, promoters, everyone who put that together. Ben, I know Renegade you were representing Renegade there. Awesome. We need more industry conferences like that. Ben, and then we'll take it out to Jim. Mm-hmm.
Now I got to figure out how to follow that up. Like, that
when
was
all
really
else
good
fails, thank your mom.
I mean, I love my mom. Thank you very much. The one I'm going to go with, though, is Alice Bader, and also with Jonathan Gunn herself. These are both two individuals that I met through D&D Adventures League, who I think I started writing a little bit before them, but we all did a bunch of writing around that same time period. And I've been able to follow their careers and promote them in various ways. And like, I probably wouldn't have gotten into, like, I love Trek. I probably would not have gotten into Star Trek Adventures to the degree I did if it was not for Al's, like, love for the game and the system, and for sharing it and telling us about how cool it is. And then also Connor, and now you, Michael. Like, all of you people are awesome. All of you wonderful people inviting me to play more games. See, this is what happens if you're doing it right.
Trek just makes it a hug fest. You know that. All right, Jim.
Trek brings everybody together. It's how it works. I want to thank all the professionals who've given me opportunities over the years, and all the professionals given other people opportunities over the years, and making so much of this industry a joyful, fun place to work. I know that there are the outliers that are negative and hard and everything else, but in general, there's really good people in this industry. And I think the good people are gravitating toward each other, so that we have this positive nugget of, like, cool stuff that we're all working on. And I'm excited by that. And I'm excited for everybody who's involved in that. I mean, you already talked about Al and John Jonathan, Connor Self, and Michael and yourself and everybody. There's just so many names that we could say that are all doing good work and aren't just doing like cool games and stuff, but they're also supporting other people and they're pulling other people up along behind them, right? And paying it forward and just helping the next generation of content creators and gamers and game developers and stuff make cool stuff. And I love your advice, Ben. Play more, read more, do more, and I'm trying to do it, man. I'm trying to dig into Itch.io when I have free time, but there's it's so much. It's like,
it's
this is
to
cool.
Say,
this is cool.
But there's so much.
There's so much great stuff out there, and I've really leaned into the game as literature because I just don't have time to play everything, but I can sure read a lot of stuff, and I'm just really inspired. And I'm super jealous of Al. Al's probably watching this. I'll just tell him again, I'm super jealous of him that he has the time to put together Sentience and Once Upon and all the other projects he's working on. I need to get off my butt and work on my own personal stuff in addition to the work that I'm doing for professional, right? But there's only so much time in the day, so it's just figuring out like, how do we make this happen? How do we do all this?
Yeah, you're only producing like 6 books a year for Star Trek, Jim.
Yeah, I mean it's not that many. I wish it was that many.
Seems like it. Cool.
But
all
anyway.
right. Well, until next time, everyone. IDIC. Thank you, Ben, for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Ben.
Very
Live
much
long
for
and
having me.
prosper. Be safe. Be well. We'll talk to you all next time.
Yep.